This was the first time in a long time that I stayed for the post-credit scene and was genuinely excited to see what was coming. Welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking Thunderbolts, *, starring Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Lewis Pullman, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, and Hannah John Kamen. It was adapted from the Thunderbolts comics created by Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley, the Avengers comics created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Captain America comics created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and the Sentry comics created by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee. That's a lot. The story was by Eric Pearson, who also wrote the screenplay with Joanna Callow, and it was directed by Jake Schreier. Now, if you're enjoying these rankings or just like the idea of getting a review of an action movie based on it being an action movie, please consider subscribing and/or following, liking, and reviewing. Please put any of your questions, comments, or suggestions into the comments area or email the show. And if you super duper like it, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TheRankPodcast. With that being said, let's dive into the Thunderbolts, starting with the potent notables. Now, quickly, before we get into it, I want to say that I will try to refrain from giving any spoilers, but I do make mistakes, so that's your spoiler alert. So as always with the potent notables, we start with the movie's financials. It's been out for about 3 weeks now, and as of May 20th, it has garnered $155.5 million domestically and $170.7 million internationally for a worldwide total of $326.3 million, and this is against a budget of $180 million. So I think they say that to really make money, you have to have double the budget. It's not quite double the budget yet, but it looks like it's definitely going to get there. It's done pretty well at the box office. So in the movie, they show Alexei, or the Red Guardian, watching TV, and he's watching an old Soviet parade. And this was an actual parade that took place on May 1st, 1981 in Moscow's Red Square. And it was a younger Alexei, Red Guardian, waving next to Prime Minister Leonid Brezhnev. He was digitally inserted into the historical footage. So I just thought that was kind of neat. Now, Steven Yeun was originally cast as Robert Reynolds, or Sentry, having worked with Jake Schreier on Beef. After filming was delayed due to the SAG-AFTRA strikes in 2023, Yeun dropped out due to scheduling conflicts and was replaced by Lewis Pullman. Curious of how different that would have been.
Sadly, we'll never know.
Director Jake Schreier made a personal request to Lee Sung-jin to rewrite the script, as he felt the previous draft by Eric Pearson focused too much on the returning characters from Black Widow. Lee is not credited as a screenwriter in the finalized film, but he obtained an additional literary material credit, whatever that is. Now, Florence Pugh loves heights and wanted to be the one to jump off the Merdeka 118 building in the opening, and she incessantly emailed Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige about not using a stunt double. Quote, "As we got closer and closer to shooting, they said they don't think it's going to happen because it's a crazy insurance ordeal, and obviously we're not going to throw her off the second tallest building in the world." I was like, what the fuck? Of course we are. We have to do that. I was being a sassy Karen, emailing Kevin and saying it's going to do wonders for the press tour. We have to do this. We're going to have 3 women break 3 different Guinness World Records, and we'll do this and this. I had to keep on pushing, and then they're like, okay, if you want to fall off the second tallest building, we'll figure it out for you. And then Pugh said that the stunt required so much willpower and adrenaline that, quote, "I fell asleep for 3 hours after I did the stunt because my brain just shut down." So James Gunn was actually interested in directing a movie focusing on this team, which Kevin Feige claimed as was a possibility should Guardians of the Galaxy do well enough at the box office. Now, the surprise success of Guardians led to Marvel quickly announcing a sequel, which resulted in Thunderbolts being relegated to development hell. By the time the film resurfaced with a 2025 release date, Gunn had decided the film was too similar to him making the Suicide Squad for DC Comics, which I get. It's kind of the same. Jake Schreier really wanted Man-Thing to become part of the roster for the Thunderbolts. Not knowing that the character had previously appeared in Werewolf by Night, Schreier ultimately concluded that Man-Thing's exclusion from the film was for the best, feeling the creature was too unpredictable and drew attention away from Bob. Mel, played by Geraldine Viswanathan, is based on Melissa Gold, or Songbird, a superheroine who was a founding member of the Thunderbolts team in the comics. Now here, she's an ordinary human who works as Val's secretary. However, she has a locket with a bird on it, referring to her comic name. Now, I found this potent notable, and I couldn't help but think, it's Marvel, man. Like, you can't really be sure that Mel won't end up becoming Songbird. Just throwing that out there. Maybe this is something that's going to be developing. We'll see. Now, this next potent notable is a good one, and I was excited I found it, but it's spoiler heavy. So this is your spoiler alert for this potent notable. If you haven't seen this movie yet, don't watch/listen to this to like the next, 30 seconds. That's your warning. I'm going to go for it now. Okay, so the ending, where Valentina announces the Thunderbolts to be the new Avengers, was expected to be met with applause and excitement. However, test screenings showed audiences didn't view them as the Avengers and didn't react all that much to it at all. So this caused Marvel and the director to go back to editing, and this is how we ended up with the credit sequence that shows the magazines and newspapers all feeling unsure about whether these are the real new Avengers. And then we get this mid-credit scene, all because of this test screening, where they talk about their branding problem with Sam Wilson. So yeah, a moment where a test screening may have actually improved the movie a little bit. Okay, spoiler over. Now we can go on to the last potent notable, which isn't necessarily potent, but I think it's still notable. So finally, this was the 36th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the final film of the MCU's Phase 5. 36 films. That's crazy. All right, that's it for the potent notables. Let's go to the movie overview. So I'm going to attempt to discuss this movie now without giving any spoilers, which may be difficult, but I think I can do it. The first thing we notice is that this story is being seen mostly through the eyes of Yelena, which is Florence Pugh's character, as she's narrating with voiceover right away. It's also a little bit heavy in the sense that she's narrating about her own existential sort of dread. This is just the beginning of the unexpected ways this movie was going to tell its story. Now, what I found really interesting is that a lot of the characters we get to see are from the seemingly lesser hits of the MCU. Similarly with Captain America Brave New World, where they pulled the villain from The Incredible Hulk, a mostly forgotten entry into the MCU. And this one pulls Yelena, Taskmaster, and Red Guardian from Black Widow, Secret Agent, or Brief Captain America, however you want to call him, and Valentina from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, and then Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I'm not saying that any of these movies were like flops or anything, but they certainly weren't like the big MCU movies that you would think of. And then it, of course, had Bucky / the Winter Soldier. That's probably the most well-known character in the movie, and is apparently a congressman now, so that's fun. I will say that the focus being on Yelena, I think, goes more to show Florence Pugh's charm, charisma, and ability as a lead actor than anything else. She's an amazing talent and continues to be. Actually, the casting choices for everyone here is pretty spot on. There are a lot of moments in this movie where you're marveling. See what I did there?
No.
At the splendor of the set design. And I'm not a heights guy, and when movies do it well, they can really get me squirming in my seat. And there's a scene in this one that involves a deep tunneled pit that does just that, where I legitimately was squirming and scared for a few moments. Which, it's I guess it's sort of embarrassing to say that the movie scared me because of heights, because I'm sitting in a seat.
Very embarrassing.
But it still did. The final showdown set was just incredibly done. I felt like I was walking through an art museum and enjoying the works. It was it's like this abstract modernism. It was really neat. Now, on top of the set design for some of these scenes that were incredible, I can tell you that I found this movie incredibly touching. I was not expecting to get emotional in this movie, but I am not afraid to admit that it absolutely got me. So what better sign is there of engagement with your characters than the audience being moved to tears by them? There was also plenty of comic relief, as we've come to expect from Marvel. It was well done, and Red Guardian was often the character that brought that, but he's also the character that brought the tears along with Yelena. So just another shout out to Florence Pugh and a new one to David Harbour for just being so good at what they do. Now, I guess I'm giving a pretty good idea of how the rank is going to go, so let's just get to it and we'll let you know how it stacks up.
Oh, rank.
So the rank is where I rank the movie based on 10 categories: story, acting, originality, action sequences, film coherence, hero appeal, villain appeal / hatred, supporting characters appeal, the final showdown, and my personal rank. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then the first category is story, which I gave a 3.25. So this may seem like a low score, but just give me a chance to back this up. The story is fun and engaging, but it's not really a story. It's sort of a mishmash, which is probably kind of the point. But is this an origin story for Sentry, or is it an origin story for the Thunderbolts, or both? It's just that it goes from thing to thing without much driving it. There just doesn't seem to be an overarching story here, and more like 4 or 5 episodes strung together. By the way, this is not me saying that I disliked it, because I liked it a lot. It's just that this category isn't its strongest. Now we go to the next category, which is acting, which I gave a 4.5. I honestly can't think of anything that didn't work, but I'm still not convinced that it was a 5. And maybe I'm wrong. Comment and let me know if you think so. Either way, everyone is excellent in this. Lewis Pullman as Bob is really good. Florence Pugh continues to be amazing. David Harbour is fantastic. Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing a competent version of Selena from Veep is incredible. Hannah John Kamen is probably a little underutilized. Wyatt Russell is probably the weaker of the group, but still really good. Honestly, it's him and Lewis Pullman that made me think it shouldn't be higher than I have it, which is not a knock on them. They were great, but there were just times, especially with Wyatt, where it felt like they maybe didn't buy the material for their character as much. Anyway, still 4.5. So let's go to originality, which I gave a 3.85. It's a superhero movie, right? I mean, how original can they be at this point? That being said, there's a mental health aspect to this that is depicted in a very original way, which I think makes it deserving of an above average score. Everything else isn't necessarily original though, so I couldn't bring myself to give it a 4, but the mental health aspect deserves to elevate. So let's go to the next category, which is action sequences, which I gave a 4.35. As always with Marvel, the action sequences are excellent. It's not a full 5 because some of the choreography felt a little slow to me at times, but there are plenty of badass moments, and it was everything you would want from a Marvel movie as far as stunt work and action sequences are concerned. So above average from an action movie standpoint, but not the best ever. So let's go to film coherence, which I gave a 3.75. Considering the premise of this movie, the fact that they were able to coherently and believably bring most of these disparate characters together, and even more impressively, believably keep them together, is quite an achievement. Now I say most because the way they brought Red Guardian left a little to be desired. Was I glad he was there? You're damn right I was. I love Red Guardian. David Harbour's fantastic. But it still wasn't the most coherent thing they did. Whenever you have an episodic movie like this, the coherence usually takes a little bit of a hit, but it was still really well done. So let's go to hero appeal, which I gave a 5. I loved how imperfect this hero team was. They weren't necessarily bad people, just people who'd made some bad choices and were maybe looking for a little redemption. The beauty of this movie is that you really root for their redemption, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of them. So let's go to villain appeal / hatred, which I gave a 3.5. So this category is interesting for this movie because who is the villain? Is it Valentina? Is it Sentry? If it's Valentina, there's not much resolution. If it's Sentry, there's some resolution, but not in a typical action movie villain way. There wasn't really anyone that I was rooting for to be defeated. Valentina kind of, so I think that's the correct pick for the villain, but I don't think we spent enough time with her to really get the feeling of hatred to want to root against her too much. Still, she was a great character and it left me wanting more from her, and the heroes were the engaging part of this movie, and they were fantastic. So the points are going to the heroes, not as much to the villains. I wish we had gotten more time with the villain. Supporting characters appeal, I also gave a 3.5. There are so many lead characters in this that it's hard to feel too strongly about any of the supporting characters, of which I could only think of 2. The congressman played by Wendell Holmes, and Mel, the administrative assistant for Valentina, played by Geraldine Vishwanathan. Wendell Holmes is always excellent in everything, and then Geraldine is a scene stealer. She's great. Still though, they're so ancillary that it makes it hard to care about them really, so their appeal can't go too high. So let's go to the next category, which is Final Showdown, which I gave a 5. This was such a unique showdown. It didn't function in a typical action movie way. It was an existential, thought-provoking abstract. It felt like a high-budget art scene. It was beautiful, in my opinion. I found myself quite moved by it, which you don't usually say for a Final Showdown, but that's what happened. So let's go to my rank, and I gave it a 5. I loved this movie. I'm not the person that has said that Marvel post-Endgame sucked. I still enjoyed their movies. Of course, there did seem to be a bit of a decline. Well, obviously in interest, but also just, I don't know. They weren't as good. They weren't bad. Okay, a lot of people were like, oh, Marvel sucks now, but they didn't suck. They're still good movies. They're just not as good as, and not as exciting as they were when they first came out so many years ago. That all being said, this next part is going to feel weird for me to say because I was just talking about how I don't really think Marvel was bad in phases 4 and 5. But after watching this, I truly felt like I could say Marvel is back. This was a superbly put together movie that actually moved me to tears at times, made me laugh, and brought genuine excitement. I think the biggest positive I can give it is that this was the first time in a long time that I stayed for the post-credit scene and was genuinely excited to see what was coming. So real quick, before I summarize, I want to let you know what the tier system is for our non-comedy rankings. From best to worst, it's absolute masterpiece, supreme cinema, I'd watch it again, meh, mediocre, rank it and regret it, and disaster piece at the bottom. The total for this one puts Thunderbolts at a 41.7, which puts it firmly into the Supreme Cinema tier. This actually puts it right in between the original Mission Impossible from 1996, which is just above it, and The Accountant 2, the episode from 2 weeks ago, just below it. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you'd like to see an updated list of our rankings, you can do that on our website at therankwithjohnandzach.com. Remember to subscribe, review, and comment, and please consider supporting us on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankpodcast, where you'll get exclusive perks. So das vidania. There did seem to be a bit of a decline
Come on, spit it out, will ya?
I can't think of the damn word.